Okay, this is Act 1, Scene 3 of Romeo and Juliet. It starts off in a room in Capulet's house. Enter Lady Capulet and the nurse. Remember, the nurse is not a medical nurse. She's like Juliet's second mom. Lady Capulet. Nurse, where's my daughter? Call her forth to me. Nurse. Now by my maidenhead at 12-year-old, I bade her come. What, lamb? What, ladybird? God forbid! Where's this girl? What, Juliet? So the nurse is a very, what's the word I'm looking for? Colorful character. So she kind of rambles a lot, and that's what she's doing here, but she's calling Juliet. Enter Juliet. Juliet. How now? Who calls? Nurse. Your mother. Juliet. Madam, I am here. What is your will? So the way that Juliet talks to her mom is really formal. Remember what we talked about with the nurse being kind of Juliet's motherly figure, and her mom is kind of more of a formal figure in her life. Lady Capulet. This is the matter. Nurse, give leave a while. Nurse, get out of here. We must talk in secret. Nurse, come back again. I have remembered me. Thou's hear our counsel. Thou knowest my daughters of a pretty age. So at first, Juliet's mom is like, Nurse, we need to talk in private. And then she's like, nah, come back. Like, you know her better than I do. You can hear this. Nurse. Faith, I can tell her age in 2 hours. So the nurse knows exactly how old Juliet is. Lady Capulet, she's not 14. Nurse. I'll lay 14 of my teeth. And yet, to my teeth be it spoken, I have but 4. She's not 14. How long is it now to Lammastide? Lammastide is a Catholic holiday in August. That's about all I know about it at this point. Lady Capulet, a fortnight and odd days. All right, if you guys have ever played the game Fortnite, a fortnight is 14 days. I don't know if you knew that. The nurse. So the nurse kind of goes off here. She's quite the character. Even or odd of all the days of the year, come Lammas Eve at night, shall she be 14. Susan and she, God rest all Christian souls, were of an age. Well, Susan is with God, but she was too good for me. But as I said, on Lammas Eve at night, shall she be 14. That shall she, Mary, I remember it well. Okay, so the nurse is talking about someone named Susan. Susan was the child that the nurse gave birth to, and the child who did not survive, which may or may not be, which is probably the reason why the nurse was able to nurse Juliet at the time. So she knows exactly how old she is because the nurse would have had a child at that time as well who didn't survive. Let's see here. 'Tis since the earthquake now 11 years, and she was weaned. I never shall forget it of all the days of the year upon that day. For when I had laid wormwood to my dug, sitting in the sun under the dove house wall, my lord and you were then at Mantua. Nay, I do bear a brain, but as I said, when it did taste the wormwood on the nipple of my dug, and felt it bitter, pretty fool, to see it tetchy and fall out with the dug. Shake, quoth the dove house, 'twas no need, I trow, to bid me trudge. So the nurse is going on about how she remembers Juliet's age because she's talking also about when she weaned Juliet. So if you have ever been on a farm, or have had puppies or something like that, you know what weaning is. And it means taking the baby away from the mother's milk and starting to get the baby to eat real food. Well, in this case, it would be taking the baby away from the nurse's milk. Juliet was the baby. So the nurse is like going off about this. And since that time, it is 11 years. For then she could stand alone. Nay, by the rood, she could have run and waddled all about, but for even the day before she broke her brow. And then my husband, God be with his soul, was a merry man. Took up the child. Yea, quoth he, dost thou fall upon thy face? Thou wilt fall backward when thou hast more wit, wilt thou not, Jule? And by my holiday, the pretty wench left crying and said, I. Okay, so the nurse again. The nurse is talking about her husband. Her husband has also died when she says, God be with his soul. But she's recalling a time when her husband was talking to Juliet when Juliet was just a little baby. She'd fallen forward and she'd bonked her head. And the nurse's husband had said, when you're older, you're going to fall on your back. Meaning you're going to lay down and do the things that married couples do when you lay down. And the nurse is like laughing about this because Juliet didn't know what the man was saying and said, yeah, I'm going to do that. So she was laughing at like the innocence of the child. Now, let's see here. To see now how jest shall come about, I warrant, and I should live 1,000 years. I never should forget it. Wilt thou not, Jewel? Quoth he, and pretty fool it stinted and said I. So she's still laughing about the fact that Juliet was like, yeah, I'm going to fall backward and do the thing that married people do. Lady Capulet, enough of this, I pray thee. Hold thy peace. Lady Capulet's like, all right, shut up, nurse. We got stuff to talk about. Nurse, yes, madam. Yet I cannot choose but laugh to think it should have leave crying and say I. And yet I warrant it had upon its brow a bump as big as a young cockerel's stone, a perilous knock. And it cried bitterly, yea, quoth my husband, fallest upon thy face. Thou wilt fall backward when thou comest to age. Wilt thou not, Jewel? And it stinted and said I. Enough, nurse, we get it. Juliet, and stint thou too, I pray thee, nurse, say I. Nurse, peace, I have done. God mark thee to his grace. Thou wast the prettiest babe that e'er I nursed, and I might live to see thee married once. I have my wish. So the nurse is like, okay, I'll stop, but I'm hoping to see you married someday. Lady Capulet, marry, that marry is the very theme I came to talk of. Tell me, daughter Juliet, how stands your disposition to be married? So the mom is like, yeah, that's what I came here to talk about. Juliet, how do you feel about getting married? She's 13. Juliet says, it is an honor that I dream not of. Juliet's not ready to get married. Nurse, an honor. Were not I thine only nurse, I would say thou hadst sucked wisdom from thy teat. I'll let you interpret that on your own. Lady Capulet, well, think of marriage now. Younger than you, here in Verona, ladies of esteem are made already mothers. By my count, I was your mother much upon these years, that you are now a maid. Thus, then, in brief, the valiant Paris seeks you for his love. So her mother says there are younger girls who are married and have children at this point. She says, I was one of them. She says, I was your mother much upon these years, that you are now a maid being someone who was not married. So she's like, I was already married. Like, it's time, Juliet. Lady Capulet, or excuse me, nurse. A man, young lady, such a man as all the world. Why, he's a man of wax. Calling someone a man of wax or a person of wax would be like, they're beautiful enough to be a wax figure. So she thinks that Paris is a good choice because he's good looking. Lady Capulet, Verona's summer hath not such a flower. Nurse, nay, he's a flower, in faith, a very flower. So the nurse is going, she really likes this Paris guy. Lady Capulet, what say you? Can you love the gentleman? This night you shall behold him at our feast. Read o'er the volume of young Paris's face, and find delight writ there with beauty's pen. Examine every married lineament, and see how one another lends content, and what obscured in this fair volume lies, find written in the margent of his eyes. This precious book of love, this unbound lover, to beautify him, only lacks a cover. The fish lives in the sea, and 'tis much pride, for fair without the fair within to hide. That book in many eyes doth share the glory, that in gold clasps locks in the golden story. So shall you share all that he doth possess, by having him, making yourself no less. So she's comparing Paris, excuse me, to a book. But the book needs a cover. And she is saying that Juliet would be the cover to complete Paris. And she also is talking about what he looks like. Look upon the volume. Volume is another name for like a bigger book. Look upon the volume of his face. He's so beautiful. Marry him. Nurse, no less, nay, bigger. Women grow by men. Women grow by men. Lady Capulet, speak briefly. Can you like of Paris's love? So she's like, do you think that you could fall for Paris? Do you think you could marry the guy? Juliet, I'll look to like, if looking liking move, but no more deep will I and dart mine eye, than your consent gives strength to make it fly. So Juliet's being kind of, I don't want to say wishy-washy, but she's saying all the right things, even though she knows she doesn't want to be with Paris. But she's like, if you think that this is a good idea, I will do my best to like him. I'll try. Enter a servant. Servant, Madam, the guests are come. Supper served up. You called. My young lady asked for. The nurse cursed in the pantry, and everything in extremity. I must hence to wait. I beseech you, follow straight. So the servant comes in and he's like, the party is happening and it's kind of chaotic and we need your help. Please come help me. And he leaves. Lady Capulet, we follow thee. Juliet, the county stays. So lady's like, yes, we will follow you. And she's like, think about Count Paris. He's a count. It's going to be good for the family. You should get married. Nurse, go girls, seek happy nights to happy days. I'll let you interpret that last part too. So the party is about to start. They're actually, like, in most versions of the play, in this scene, the mother and Juliet are kind of getting dressed, and the nurse is helping them get dressed for the party. That is Act 1, Scene 3.